200 support tickets per hour, users charged twice for a single order. The root cause? A server action form with no pending state management. Let's break down server actions deep dive. Forms, validation, and progressive enhancement, how it works, and the exact mistake behind that failure. Server actions are async functions decorated with the useServer directive. They run on the server but can be called directly from client components, primarily via the form action attribute. The framework handles serialization, transport, and response streaming. You just write a single function that receives form data, validates it, performs mutations, and returns a result. useActionState is a React 19 hook that binds a server action to a form with automatic state management. It returns the action's return value, a pending flag, and a form action function. The pending flag is the key. When true, you disable the submit button and show a loading indicator, preventing double submissions. Here's a basic checkout form using useActionState. The isPending flag disables the submit button while the action is running. This prevents users from clicking multiple times and submitting duplicate payments. Client-side validation is for instant feedback, but it can be bypassed. Server-side validation with Zod is essential for security. Use safeParse instead of parse to avoid throwing exceptions. Instead, return structured errors that the form can display next to each field. Define a shared Zod schema and use safeParse inside the server action. If validation fails, map the errors to field names and return them. The form can then display inline error messages. Progressive enhancement means your form works even with JavaScript disabled. The form action equals server action. Attribute acts as a standard HTML form action. The browser serializes the form and posts to the server. When JavaScript loads, the framework intercepts the submission and provides client-side pending states. This newsletter form works with or without JavaScript. The form action calls the server action directly. With JS, useActionState provides pending state and disables the button. Without JS, the browser does a full-page post. After a server action mutates data, the cached page is not automatically refreshed. You must explicitly call revalidatePath or revalidateTag to tell Next.js the cache is stale. Otherwise, users see old data even after a successful mutation. After updating the database, call revalidatePath for the specific product page and revalidateTag for any data cache entries. This ensures the UI reflects the latest data. Multi-step forms with server actions require managing state across submissions. Use useActionState to accumulate data and consider saving partial state to the database so users can refresh without losing progress. This multi-step checkout uses useActionState to track the current step and accumulated data. Each submission processes the current step and returns the next step state. Uncaught errors in server actions result in generic 500 pages. Always wrap the action body in try-catch and return structured error state. Distinguish between validation errors, business logic errors, and system errors, and always show user-friendly messages. Wrap the entire action in try-catch. On error, return a user-friendly message without exposing system details. This is the same issue we highlighted at the start. Here's exactly why that happened. The form had no useActionState, so the submit button was never disabled. When users clicked twice quickly, 2 server action invocations fired. The idempotency key was generated inside the action, so each call had a different key. The payment gateway processed both charges. The form lacked useActionState, so clicking submit twice within 200 ms fired 2 server action invocations with different idempotency keys, causing duplicate charges. The fix involved adding useActionState to disable the submit button immediately on click. The idempotency key is now generated client-side before the action call, ensuring uniqueness per form mount. The server also checks if a key has already been processed before executing the mutation. Without useActionState, there's no pending state. Each click on the submit button invokes the server action independently. If a user clicks twice quickly, 2 payments are processed. If the idempotency key is generated inside the server action, each call gets a new key. The server cannot deduplicate, so double submissions still process. Using parse throws a Zod error on validation failure. In a server action, this results in a generic internal server error page. The user sees no helpful message about which field failed. Without revalidation, the page continues to serve cached data. The user sees a success message, but the comment list doesn't update until a manual refresh. The article mentions auth checks in passing, but doesn't show a complete pattern. Every server action must authenticate and authorize, treating arguments as untrusted input. This snippet shows a secure delete action with session verification and ownership check. The article uses useActionState, which is available in React 19 and Next.js 16. In Next.js 15 with React 18, the hook is useFormState and does not return as pending directly. You must track pending state manually. Always check your React version before using these hooks. The article mentions optimistic updates, but doesn't show code. This pattern uses useOptimistic from React 19 to update the UI immediately while the server action runs, then reverts on error. It's critical for responsive UIs like likes or comments. Use these commands to quickly diagnose common server action issues. Check if useActionState is used for pending state, if revalidation is called after mutations, and if safeParse is used instead of parse. Let's run through some common interview questions. How do server actions differ from API routes? Server actions are async functions called directly from forms, no HTTP endpoint, integrated with React transitions and cache revalidation. How to prevent double submissions in a payment form? Use useActionState to disable button when is pending, generate client-side idempotency key, and server-side dedup. What is progressive enhancement in server actions? Form works as full-page post without JS. Enhances to client-side submission with JS, using form action. And a few frequently asked questions. What is the difference between server action and API route? Server action is a function called directly from form. API route is an HTTP endpoint called with fetch. How to prevent double submissions? Use useActionState and client-generated idempotency keys. Can server actions be called outside forms? Yes, via start transition, but progressive enhancement is lost. Let's recap the key takeaways. Always use useActionState for pending state. Disable submit button when is pending. Use Zod safeParse on server for security. Call revalidatePath after mutations. Ready to go deeper? Up next, environment variables and configuration in Next.js 16, then testing Next.js applications. Unit, integration, and E2E testing, then internationalization I18N in Next.js 16 and self-hosting Next.js, Docker, Node.js, and deployment strategies. Find them all at TheCodeForge.io. Thanks for watching. The full article and code examples are covered in detail at TheCodeForge.io.